Cool.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and I've got a very special guest on here today. We have Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports, NBA analyst. If you guys have a Yahoo fantasy team, you just see this dude's name popping up in your push notifications nonstop. So we had to get him on for you guys, and we've been doing this podcast pretty much yearly, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm happy to have you back here, Dan. How you doing?
Doing great, Joe, and it's always great to talk to you, man. I love how this is becoming an annual thing, and we used to collab at the Action Network on our weekly piece on props and fantasy, and I'm glad to see you still keep that going. Not on the fantasy side, but hey, man, the prop, what's it called?
Player props.
Player prop. You had a catchy line to it.
Oh, the player prop forecast.
There we go. They're forecasting. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to see you still keeping that running and all things buckets. And yeah, man, it's great that, just talk about hoops this time of year. And I know you're super excited as a Knicks fan right now.
A lot of things happening in the world. And I haven't actually given my take on the trade yet. So I know that's one of the things we're going to talk about on this episode. So I'm sure people are going to want to tune in. They're going to be like, how did Joe digest this? So you're going to get it. You're going to get it first. You're going to get it live. But one of the things that, you do, obviously, is you do a ton of fantasy analysis. And I think that, part of why we got along so well and part of why we worked so well, like when we were working on that one piece that we did together, because we did a fantasy basketball forecast, for those of you that didn't know, a couple of years ago. And there is like a pretty good tie-in, I think, to paying attention to fantasy hoops and how it relates to like betting on the sport as well. From your interaction with it, like, do you find that like when you start looking for some of the edges that you find on fantasy hoops, because you're like really into like the nitty gritty, like the really niche players or markets or whatever, what are like some of the things that you look at for that? And then do you think that there is like a little bit of a translation to the betting side of it?
Absolutely. There's definitely correlation there. And I think a lot of our processes are very similar. I think your point is really sound in terms of like in fantasy, you have to be in the trenches of like knowing the rotations, knowing how many minutes and predicting how many minutes players are going to get. That's what's going to net fantasy production. And in turn, there's definitely some carryover of how that could play into the betting market as well. So I think it's really interesting how the iGaming space is just kind of, transcended throughout the country. Because back in the day when I used to play fantasy sports, you would never really have a market to assess against. Whereas now, we have these season-long props. We have season-long, for football, basketball, whatever. It kind of gives you a marker of like how good our player is going to be. And, some of the markets that I tend to look at for like breakouts are, who's projected to be the most improved player. I think this year's a little bit odd because they have Wemby on there. I don't think, he's largely been like, I don't know, I think he's like
freak,
overqualified. He's overqualified. And I think that was kind of the case last year with Tyrese Maxey. But there's also some interesting names on that list that I'm like, from a fantasy perspective, they haven't really hit that breakout territory. Like, have they gone from, a really good player to an all-star? Have they gone from an all-star to an all-NBA player? And I think we can get kind of signals from the betting markets on how some of these players might shape out or how they're being viewed. And so, a lot of my process really gets down to when I'm analyzing a fantasy asset or a player prop, I'm looking at usage rates. I'm looking at the advanced data. What does the metrics say about this guy's performance on the court versus off the court? Does he impact winning? Because I think at its very elementary basic level, if your player is probably not impacting winning, the chances of him earning more minutes is probably going down. But there could be players that are on a per minute basis are very effective. They're like, maybe this guy should rock more. Maybe there's something that's a pendulum swinging in terms of this guy's usage or how he's being utilized that could be unpacked going ahead. So a lot of this is looking at similar data points. We both use dunks and threes, props.cash, NBA.com, basketball reference. All of these guys are I would say, industry standard for evaluating players as it pertains to betting or fantasy.
Yeah, and I think that part of what you just said about in terms of like the most improved player, right? It's such an interesting conversation, and we'll touch on Wemby in a little bit, but he's obviously the favorite for most improved player of the year this year. But then like the coaches, or the GMs rather, they just did a GM poll, and Jalen Williams was at like the top of that list. And Jalen Williams is a very popular pick here. He was like 25-1 about a week ago, 20-1. It's down to 15-1 now at DraftKings. When you're looking at some of these players, like, is he somebody that without Josh Giddey maybe can really take a step forward in this offense where, you added, perimeter players, like you added Alex Caruso, you add Isaiah Hartenstein, like I miss him already. But, you add him into the mix. There is going to be more opportunity with the ball from Jalen Williams. Is he somebody that you think it's not necessarily like a new opportunity in a way, but it's just that like it's almost like addition by subtraction of Giddey? Like there's usage opening up on that team.
There's absolutely usage opening up. And one of the things that I think was key in kind of trying to understand where Jalen Williams could grow this year, for me, it was really with the assists and the potential assists. So when Giddey got benched pretty much in the playoffs, one thing changed dramatically, and that was Jalen Williams' activity with the ball in his hands. His usage went up. He averaged 2 more potential assists per game. He was almost up to 10 potential assists per game. And so when you add Alex Caruso, he's a very solid bench piece. He's probably going to earn some starts depending on the lineups. But we're talking about a secondary playmaker in this Oklahoma City Thunder unit. It's got to be Jalen Williams. And I think with his efficiency and taking on some of that scoring load as well, he's going to average over 20 points per game. Could he get to 5 assists with 5 rebounds? I mean, that's like one of those all NBA, third team, definitely all-star type leaps. Yeah. Assuming that the Thunder are as good as advertised as they were last year, top team in the Western Conference.
The Thunder look legit, and I mean the GMs think so too. They voted 80% of them voted that the Thunder are going to be the team that comes out of the Western Conference. So definitely like really interesting to see that like coalition of GMs like having that same thought process too, saying like, yeah, they're 100% the team to beat, and I think that kind of helps. Like it rises tides, it gives eyes, and like that's all things that kind of matter in terms of like how players pop in the voting. Are there any other players that you think are like on the rise this year, whether it's a second year player, whether it's a player on a new team? Who is somebody that you think is, maybe like next up and saying like they have a chance of maybe making an all-star team, or they have like a chance at being like a consistent starter in the league?
So there's levels to that, right? I think Jalen Johnson had a mini breakout last year, but the fact that he only played 57, 58 games kind of soured me on his like, okay, is he like a breakout? If he plays 70 games, this dude's going to put up really good production. The only question I have is like, how good are the Atlanta Hawks going to be? What state are they going to be in by, mid-season? But I think there's another level that he can reach. If he's assuming he's healthy, and now DeJounte Murray out, he's going to take on more playmaking opportunities. We saw that he can average, close to 3-4 assists per game. He's already going to get the double-digit rebounds. He could have a really nice stat profile for a most improved player. I also like Franz Wagner. Coming off of his performance in the Paris Olympics, he was one of the top scorers in all of FIBA. And, while Paolo Banchero is an excellent player and his first-time All-Star last year, Franz has some game to him too. And I think, now that they got rid of Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs is another player that I'm eyeing. I don't think he'll take as substantial of a leap as some of those other players that I mentioned. But he's going to have the ball in his hands more. And I think it's going to, pecking order, it's definitely Paolo first, then it's Franz Wagner. Franz Wagner could average 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists potentially, with a really strong peripheral stat. So with assuming that Orlando is going to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, he's easily a guy that I could see kind of take that leap into breakout territory. And all of the advanced data, his EPM, plus minus on offense and defense has been stellar. Is actually the best on the Orlando Magic. So he might impact winning more than Paolo does, even though Paolo's really the hub of that team. Warriors, that's like the other team that I'm like.
I was going to say, what do you think about the Warriors? Because you really got, the conversation is like, is it Kuminga? Is it Podziemski? And like there was a lot of resistance in trading either of those guys. And the conversation was around like whether or not you ship one of them, two of them, or like either of them or none of them for Lauri Markkanen, who would realistically have been like a perfect fit schematically on that Warriors team. Who is the guy that you would rather hitch your wagon to? Like if you were even if you were in like a dynasty format and you said like, I got to bet on, because that's a little bit of what this is too. It's like they're both in a bigger opportunity, but if you had to look at them and say like, who would I rather be associated with long term? Kuminga's got a couple more years under his belt. Podziemski, obviously second year player now. What do we think in terms of the Warriors, young players?
Yeah, so the Warriors are one of my more frustrating teams to kind of peg this year. And I'm kind of avoiding them in fantasy outside of Stephen Curry.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Kuminga falls in the right spot, I'm interested. But with Brandon Podziemski, I liked all the offseason talk about him potentially getting up 10 threes per game. I think that was also part of the hype train of like, hey, it's the offseason. Let's just gas people up and say wild shit. And so the problem that I have with Podziemski is that like they started DeAnthony Melton. And there's a very good chance if he's healthy, he could be that guy that can not only stretch the floor, but also play multiple positions, plays defense very well. It could just be a preference of Steve Kerr to have a more defensive starting unit than Podziemski. And Podziemski is a good defender, but he could also soak up a ton of usage in that second unit that actually doesn't look that great right now in terms of opportunity. They also brought in Buddy Hield, which also kind of mucks up things a little bit too. So I don't really know what's going on with Andrew Wiggins. If I had to hitch my bet with somebody, it's going to be Kuminga. I don't know what Draymond and team are talking about. He's a small forward. He's a power forward. I don't really care. I think at this point, it's pretty clear that Kuminga needs to be on the floor. He gives them that layer of, or that added athleticism that they just sorely lacked last year. And we'll see what he can do in terms of like being able to do and create outside of just being a slasher, very efficient at the rim. Want to see his J kind of come together. But I think ultimately he's probably going to be the most productive and the second option of that offense.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, this has been like talked about in terms of the draft class, right? It seems like a relatively weak draft class. And from fantasy perspective, it's interesting with rookies in the first place, because a lot of times people draft rookies and you're like, they're just not that good, honestly. Like you look at their production, they're not efficient. They're really inefficient. They don't get enough minutes. The rotation's kind of like wonky, right? And then a lot of times the coaches have like quick plugs on them, or like the team's just bad. So looking at this year's class, it's a little bit interesting because the player that is actually like the favorite to win Rookie of the Year, Zach Edey, was not like the number one pick.
No.
So what do you think about the rookie class this year? Because like I thought that looking at this year, it just didn't seem like a super strong class. And I questioned how many players were even going to get like consistent minutes in their rotations.
That's exactly right. And I think one thing that I saw that you posted earlier is how high you are on the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's the thing that will carry Zach Edey to win the award, because I don't know that he's going to play, he's not going to be playing 30 minutes a night, right? Like They have a pretty nice depth in that front court with Brandon Clark and obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. when he comes back. Santi Aldama can still get minutes. So the one thing I am pretty positively encouraged about for Edey is that he's going to start. I think he's going to play that Steven Adams role with Taylor Jenkins' offense. And I don't know if you watched it last night, but there was this one moment where he did some kind of like high screen, Ja went off of it, and then Edey did a delay freaking lob, and he's like, everyone's talking about, oh, Edey's not athletic, he can't move. I'm like, I don't get the slander, man. Like that was like the one piece when the Memphis Grizzlies were really good. They had a huge guy in the middle that's not afraid to freaking bang, set screens, and rim protect. That's what Edey's going to do. He doesn't need to do it a lot. 20 minutes, 25 minutes, he's going to be an effective impact player for this team. So I like his upside just because, one, he's going to be starting and he's going to be on a good team. Probably a 50-plus win team if this team can stay healthy. RIP Ja's ankles that already got tweaked a little bit.
That was tough.
Scaring the crap out of us already. But I do think that your point about this being a pretty weak draft class, that's opportunity for the betting market, because there's a lot of options you can go here. If you look at that GM survey, who was going to be the best player in 5 years, everyone said by a landslide Reed Shepherd.
Yeah.
The problem with Reed Shepherd is, how is he going to get minutes? Is you have bench Fred VanVleet? No.
Yeah.
So even though he's projected to be really good, I think you have to look at other players like Alexander Sarr, who to me, he's going to be starting power forward. The further you get into the season, Washington Wizards, they're going to go full development mode. So there's a very good opportunity for him. He didn't look good in the summer league, but the first preseason, showing was
Looks
actually
fine,
pretty
yeah.
encouraging in terms of his ability to shoot in the mid range. He had a couple of nice little short rolls to the basket. The defense was there. Right now, I think he's the second or third shortest odds to
Yeah,
win
he's
the
like
award.
third or fourth. Yeah, third or fourth. It depends on like which book, honestly, because you have Edey plus 550, Shepard plus 650, Risa Shea plus 900, and then Sarr is tied with Castle and Buzelis at 10-1, and then you have
Castle's behind Chris
Castle.
Paul.
His offensive bag is like not like we saw that one. He had that one nice highlight last night or 2 nights ago. But
that's what he does. He takes it to the rack. That's the only thing you do. You're not going to get a highlight of Stephon Castle knocking down a step back three, right?
No.
Like, he doesn't have that game yet.
No.
Whereas Buzelis, I'm really curious about because if they move Zach LaVine by any chance, he's going to get those minutes. And if Pat Williams sucks, then maybe there's a chance that they bench him. That was easily one of the worst contracts of the offseason. I'm like, why did you re-sign this guy?
That was brutal, man. You just didn't have to. Like, nobody who was going to give that to him? Nobody. So
Buzelis is a guy that I really like. Love the way that he looked in the summer league. Like, I think he could be a rotational hub for them and be a primary scorer off the bench. Him and Ayo Dosunmu could be a really nice tandem off the bench there. But yeah, I think I lean Alex Sarr right now. And as I'm watching the Hawks game, Risa Shea looks really good.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's going to be starting right away, but again, once we get to that mid-season mark and the Atlanta Hawks might be mailing it in, they're not very good. Trae Young's pissed. They're going to give their young boys some run.
Yeah, and the Hawks are such an interesting situation too, because they brought in who just signed there? Larry Nance. They brought in Larry Nance, right? Mm-hmm. So and he was on the Hoop Collective a month ago because he's an Ohio guy, so he was at the live show, whatever. And he was saying, he was we're going for the play-in. We're trying to be a play-in team. And I'm like, I guess you must be I don't know. But
how is that your goal? I'm trying to be the 9th or the 10th seed here, man.
Bro, you played with LeBron and Kobe. What are we doing?
Well, he just came from the Pelicans, so I think he's just all kinds of confused right now.
Yeah, he has no idea what's going on.
What are we doing? I have no calibration of how to assess this situation.
Exactly.
Part of that though, one of the things that I've been often debating in fantasy is, what are they going to do with Clint Capella? Because they could just let his contract run out. Maybe they just, let's just run this into the ground. Dude's been there forever. But they paid Onyeka Okongwu a lot of money. His contract hits the books this year. So are you just going to sit him? Are you going to, he's had his minutes increase the last, each of the last 4 years. And he's really good. So that's why I'm like, are they going to just, have a change into the guard there? When's that going to happen? I don't really know what to project about the Atlanta Hawks, man. Yeah. I'm just all over the place with them.
I think the Hawks are in this unique situation where everybody kind of knows they want to move off Capella, so then they're not getting any offers.
No leverage.
The offers are horrible. But you're right. It is getting to a point now where it's hey, do you want to get anything back for him? Because there are teams that could use a center. It's I'm surprised they didn't call up the Knicks and say hey,
when they made the move for Cat, I was so surprised. I was obviously they're going to go get Clint Capella now that Mitchell Robinson's out. And if you could, because I knew they didn't want to pay for Walker Kessler. You're you don't want to go 2 firsts.
You want 2 firsts, Danny Ainge, which is I was bro, come on, man.
It's Danny Ainge being Danny Ainge, right?
You don't even play him. They don't even play him.
Now they're starting him though, because now Ainge is damn, I probably I probably showed my hand too fast there. Let me get this guy out to show you guys.
Let me get his value back up. So. Yeah. But speaking of Cat, because we can lead into Cat with this kind of conversation. Besides Cat, obviously, what player in a new situation do you think is most likely to make a real significant impact?
Oh, probably. Josh Giddey is going to have a pretty nice opportunity now that he's going to be playing 30 minutes. He's going to be primarily playing point guard. He's always been a stat stuffer. He's actually a guy I think that could be a nice candidate for most improved. Just don't know if his scoring will be there, but I think the points and assists the rebounds and the assists are definitely going to be something I'll be probably looking at a lot in the prop market. But Paul George, I think is the most impactful.
It has to, yeah,
because it just raises the Sixers floor. You can account for Embiid missing some games. Paul George and Maxey can kind of help carry that load. But then also if Paul George misses games, you kind of have Embiid. And then, Maxi's just the kind of the all-star that kind of holds it all together. But I think that this is really going to make the Sixers like an actual contending team. Like this is what they needed in order to get into that top 3. Like I didn't believe in them last year. Like something was going to go left.
And you knew it.
You just knew it. And then if it wasn't for, Embiid may or may not have taken out Mitchell Robinson for the long haul, who knows? The Knicks might have gotten past the Indiana Pacers. But in order to compete with the big 3, the Boston Celtics, the Knicks, the Sixers had to get somebody like Paul George. And I'm curious to see how Paul George is going to play against the Knicks when, you have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby in your face. They might be neutralized, but that's where I feel like the Knicks, that's like their one flaw is that they need to get a true post presence that can handle Embiid, because right now they have no answer for him. It damn sure isn't going to be Cat.
It's not Karl Anthony Towns. No. And I think that is part of it though, right? Because like the price was way too high on Walker Kessler. The conversation had been like always around Leon Rose wanting Karl Anthony Towns, and they like go and they make this big move, and you have the situation where basically everybody's prime is lined up. Everybody's like about the same amount, like same age, like you're in the same situation, like this, you're going for it, right? When they make this move, like I think they still have Mitchell Robinson, which I think is important, because I think you need him to deal with the Joel Embiid, and then maybe honestly, like in those 20-ish minute like stints, he can maintain some health. He can get like actually stay on the floor. He can give you that raising of the floor in terms of the offensive rebounding, whatever. But what do you think about this trade in terms of Cat to the Knicks? Because it's really like a dramatically different team than they put out on opening day last year, and then honestly, like even in the playoffs too.
I think it's a short-term win, and it could be a long-term win, assuming that they're going to, continue to do these ridiculous financial cap management. Like the way that they've been managing the cap has just been outstanding. Like the way that they just understand it. I'm trying to liken it to another like franchise, but I feel like recent memory I can't remember someone that's.
It's almost like Moneyball. Like it feels like that, except there's no cap there. They just were cheap. Like,
so, I'm going to give you $1 over the minimum.
Yeah.
But, I think that the Julius Randle experience was very frustrating for New York fans. Like, it was great because, he got you guys out the gutter post Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
But I think his lack of production in the playoffs really kind of soured very quickly. And I think it was clear after he got hurt and Brunson just became a superstar that something needed to change. And I don't know that him having to defer and change his game would have been the best fit for that team long term. So I think the idea of getting Cat, a guy that can be a great, pick and pop type of guy, is great. But then also you have one of the most efficient bigs that can also, has experience with Tibbs. Like he wasn't mature enough to handle Tibbs when he was younger. He's at that point now, and there was a great point by you. Is like everyone's kind of at that same point in their careers where it's like, hey, we're trying to win now. We have some experience. We've been on different teams, different environments. We got a core nucleus that we can really build off of. And we're all very selfless. I saw a podcast where Karl Anthony Towns was talking, I think he was talking on Club Shay Shay about Brunson's willingness to take a discount. And he's like, that crew just must be so tightly knit that he's willing to do something like that. Like that's something I would sign up for. And then of course they trade for
it happens.
So I think that the fit is just perfect. Now it's just a matter of, did you lose too much depth in Dante DiVincenzo? I think the way that Deuce McBride looks right now, I think it's okay. Yeah. And if you're going to give Tyler Kolek some minutes, okay. I think their depth was hurt a little bit, but I think it's more about you got to get someone that didn't need a lot of usage in order to be effective and as an effective shooter. That's everything that Julius Randle wasn't. And you'll sacrifice some playmaking, but I think you could get that from other elements of your team. So I thought it was a great short-term move for the Knicks. We'll see how it pans out beyond that. I also like it for Minnesota, though, too, because they got out of their second apron, financial woes by, not having to pay Cat anymore. Julius Randle I think he has a player option for like $28 million. Probably going to decline it. We'll see how this season goes. But I think that just opened up a little bit more financial space for them. And they got sixth man of the year, Naz Reid. He's going to get more of an opportunity to showcase what he can do. Getting Dante DiVincenzo, I think, was huge for their bench. And the way Rob Dillingham looked in a couple preseason games, I think they might have gotten their, eventual Mike Conley replacement.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. They just look like they're going to be a better team as well. This is like one of those rare, I think they both won type of deals.
Yeah, I think they both kind of made out in terms of like what their goals were, right? Because it seems bizarre to make a move to like you were just in the Western Conference Finals and then you trade like I know it's Ant's team now, but it's like Cat is a franchise cornerstone.
Huge.
Like
he was huge for them.
Yeah, and that was like a big deal. So it's definitely tough. I've come around on it a lot more for the Knicks because at first it's funny because like there's tweets like messages like I've slandered Cat so much and I'm just like but and I was like
everybody did
and I'm like that's not the trade, but then like when I'm looking at it now, part of it is the cost for him. Like the monetary cost is the monetary cost. The Knicks were kind of already pot committed to spending like a lot of money and like locking in the majority of this roster, right? So given that, like that, put that aside, on court, like I think it's a fantastic fit. The offense is going to be, I think, humming. And the biggest thing to me is like the conversation around the Knicks in the playoffs had always been, well, like they do so well because they hustle, because they get offensive rebounds, they like create that edge, and that's what sets them apart in the regular season because other teams aren't doing that. I think this made the team to a point where it's like, hey, the offense might actually be so good that we're not even really as worried about offensive rebounds anymore. Like we'll still grab them because we're going to hustle, but we're not like depending on them because we're actually making the shots. And I think that makes like a huge difference in the way that like you have to look at this Knicks team, the way you have to look at their offense, and honestly, probably even the way that you have to look at some other teams playing against the Knicks, saying like, hey, this is probably going to be a pretty fast-paced game. There's going to be a lot of points being scored by the Knicks. That's going to limit some of your rebound opportunities, and you're also going to probably be playing a little bit more half court as opposed to in transition because like you're just not going to have as many opportunities off of rebounds or off of missed shots.
Right. Yeah, I think that their core is like, we talked about how Oklahoma City Thunder is going to be absolutely, game changing in terms of defensive lockdown mode. I think the Knicks could be something similar. I'm curious to see if they're going to start Josh Hart. I think that's more likely than not. But when you have someone like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges there who, great catch and shoot guys from the corners, from above the break, they're going to be a dangerous team offensively. And I think that's probably the more underrated story about this. Like Tibbs is always about his minutes and running people into the ground and his tenacity, the hustle. This identity might shift a little bit because this team is going to be scoring way more efficiently than they were before. And I think you just add a whole nother dimension when you get someone like Cat, probably the best 7-foot shooter that's been in the game. So I think the one thing that's going to be the question mark for the Knicks is, can they stay healthy? OG Anunoby has not been able to stay healthy.
No.
And he impacts winning. And so if he can play 70 games, you have Mikal Bridges being the Iron Man that he is, Brunson lasts out. Dude, this is going to be a scary roster. And if Boston doesn't get KP back, watch out.
Yeah, this is definitely a team that I'm excited to watch. I think it's the best team that I've probably watched the Knicks at least field since like I've been paying attention to basketball. So I'm definitely really excited. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Knicks fans. I think they're going to be high in the league pass rankings for anybody that's not in the New York broadcast area.
How do you think it compares to the 2000 roster with like Spree, Larry Johnson, Allen Houston?
They were fun. They were definitely fun. How old was I? I was 8. So like I appreciated them, but not in the same way because it's like you're 8.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're like yeah, they're good. Like they're fun. And then you're just yelling Allen Houston like that. But aside from that, it's like the memories are not they're not as crisp for me.
Dude, that was my squad in like NBA Live 2000. Like I was a big Allen Houston Spree guy. I was a Spree guy back when the Golden State Warriors days. I don't know why. I just something about the jersey and like I don't know. He was Latrell Sprewell, like so dope. But yeah, that squad was nasty, man. And so like it just took a while for, Carmelo brought back a little bit of hype, and then you had the Linsanity moment. But I mean, I don't think anyone projected. Like I was a big Brunson guy. Like I always thought he was going to be really good from a fantasy perspective. But to take that massive leap into All NBA, like top dog, like y'all won on that. That was a huge moment. Is Cat a guy too?
Yeah. So that's the other thing. So these are like all Leon guys at the end of the day, and I think that's like he knew what he wanted to do, and it's been planned for like a long time. Realistically, so it's like been a really fascinating build up to get to this point, because it's like when you look at all the moves, you're like, all right, well, like Embiid got Maxey broke out,
maxed out.
So then like Embiid's not asking out anymore. Then you get Paul George, obviously. Then like you see the way like some of these superstars are like linking up. It's like Giannis wasn't going to ask out because they bring in Dame. So like you look at that and you're like, all right, well, this is the lay of the land here. Jalen Brunson's unbelievable. Let's try to win. Let's do what we can. And let's surround him with the best possible talent. So, super excited about the Knicks. Two other teams that I wanted to pick your brain on, and I'm curious to know what you think, because I think they're both like at kind of like a pivot point, right? And they're in the same division. And the teams that I'm talking about are the New Orleans Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies obviously just had like the year from hell last year. Nobody could stay healthy. Ja Morant's like off-court issues plus the injuries. And then you have the Pelicans, who are like I feel like on paper they are one of the most talented teams in the league. Just like flat out. Like when you look down the roster, you're like, man, they got a lot of dudes. When you look at these two teams, which one do you think is like more situated for like long-term success? And then like, or is there a team that you're saying like this year, you're like, boy, like this could go really sideways and everybody's going the wrong, like everybody's going to get traded.
I love that you chose the Memphis Grizzlies and the Pelicans to do that, because I mean, I don't know what the hell is going on with the Pelicans, because it's great that you get DeJounte Murray from a defensive perspective, also playmaking. I think that, he's a true point guard facilitator that they needed. CJ McCollum filled that role last year, but I don't think that was the right fit for him. Like, they're going to have to make so many hard decisions, and I just don't know when they're going to be able to do this, but they're not going to make it through the rest of the season with Daniel Tice, Messi, and Makovich as their like front court. They're going to have to make a trade. And I don't know who that trade partner is and whether that's a sacrifice of Brandon Ingram, but, same problem with Clint Capella, with Zach LaVine. Some people they just don't have that much trade value right now, because they're like, hey, you don't have any leverage. We know you have to sit on this, and we're just going to let it pan out, see how it goes. The fact that Trey Murphy got hurt, I think, made the decision process a little bit easier in the beginning of the season. But how do you not keep Trey Murphy and Herb Jones in the starting lineup? Like at this point,
so good.
You have Jordan Hawkins on the bench, who could easily be a 7th, 8th man. They have such a good team, but I just don't think that the fit for everybody is right. And this all, again, is really predicated on, can Zion Williamson stay healthy?
Yeah.
And he looks great right now. He looks like he's in shape. Point Zion is back, which makes this team, gives them another dimension. But I just don't know that they're going to be able to hold it down with their front court. So my choice would be the Memphis Grizzlies. I think that their team is just well constructed in terms of their star power mixed with their complementary roles. They play very well off each other. I think they did a great job drafting Zach Edey. They have plenty of depth, and actually they built out all of the injuries that they had last year. Actually give a unique opportunity for them to kind of see what they had in their building. It sucks that Vince Williams Jr. got hurt, but like he was a really good Swiss Army knife that was going to play a pivotal role for them off the bench. And so I think the Memphis Grizzlies actually took that, kind of similar to what happened with the Warriors when Steph broke his hand in like 5 or 6 games or whatever. It was like, hey, let's just let all the young guys run. And then they brought it back. It's like, hey, we actually have a pretty good roster here. I think that's kind of what's going to happen with the Memphis Grizzlies. And everyone keeps forgetting that, like Marcus Smart, a former defensive player of the year, questionable defensive player of the year, but still a dog on defense anyway.
You won.
Like he's going to come back, and I'm sure he's got, a chip on his shoulder as well. So I think Memphis is going to be a scary out, man. If they stay healthy, Jaren Jackson Jr. is obviously a little bit injured right now, but I think once they're firing on all cylinders and they're back, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I don't know that people can keep up with them, because they have it, front court locked down. They have shooters. John Morant, one of the best players in the game when healthy. That's gonna be a scary team.
Yeah, I think the Grizzlies are going to be dynamite, and like I've got a bunch of bets on them. They're like one of the few win total bets that I've actually bet. So that tells you everything about the fact that I like them this season. I bet some of the alts.
When did you get their?
I got
what
it
did
at
they open
I
at?
got a 45.5, I think.
Wow, it's up to like what 47, 48
yeah, 47,
now?
48. Like I got some 50 plus, some 55 plus. I think they could. I think they could push for like a top seed just based on the fact they're very well coached. They're getting all these dudes back, and like you said, when you have like when John Morant was out, when Desmond Bane was out, honestly, Jaren Jackson Jr. got to like develop his offensive game, and some it's like it was questionably efficient, but then it started to become like a little bit more efficient. And it's like, hey, when you're the number 3 option on the team, or maybe even number 4, and you're not the number 1, and you're pulling out this bag of tricks that you had to play, like it's going to dramatically, I think, increase his like efficiency and like his offensive bag, the team's overall offensive picture. So I really do like the Memphis Grizzlies this season. So I'm glad that we agree. I'm glad that we are aligned.
We're aligned, man. That's one of the teams that I'm definitely eyeing. Like, I mean, the draft capital on some of the the Memphis Grizzlies are a bit high. Like most of the superstars are going to go within the first 4 rounds. But
yeah,
I think if they can stay healthy, man, they're going to have a season. Definitely going to put together a really solid season. But this Western Conference, man, it's just going to be so interestingly loaded. And I think we're going to start to see some of those, mainstays kind of fall out of contention. Like Houston Rockets, I think that they're going to be a playing team. Like I think their win total's at like 43.5.
Yeah.
If they start Amen Thompson over Dylan Brooks, what they absolutely should do.
Yeah.
They're going to be another tough out, man. So I don't know. These young boys are definitely hungry right now. So, and then no one ever talks about the Kings. We'll see where they kind of land.
To me, like I feel like they're mid. I just don't. I don't think that they're that good. But like their floor, I think is high. So it's kind of one of those. It's one of those situations where you're like, okay, like, are they just going to be pesky? Like, are they just going to be like an 8 seed, a 9 seed, because they're just not going to go away? Because like from a health perspective, Sabonis like pretty much never misses, and then DeRozan's been like relatively healthy. And then even Fox, like he has some of his issues, but like the floor is high on this team, and there's a lot of continuity. But they're a team to me that I'm like I don't think they're going anywhere ever. But like also they seem okay with doing that. Like that just seems to be what they're doing. So the one question that I do have for you from a fantasy perspective, who's your 101?
Got to be Victor Wembanyama, man. We're witnessing history, dude.
This year, it has to be.
It's got to be. It's got to be. Now, granted, it's a win-win situation. Like if you get the triple-double king, Jokic has 119 triple-doubles since 2019, leads the NBA, 3-time MVP. We know what Jokic brings to the table, but can he get a quadruple-double? Can he do that? I don't know that he's capable of that. He also shoots. Victor Wembanyama can shoot threes. They're actually, statistically, they're not that far. Like, I think for the most part, Jokic can do most things that Wemby can do, probably outside of just the shot blocking. The variance of the shot blocking is really just what's going to catapult Wemby over the field. He had the second most fantasy points in the modern era, only to David Robinson. And if you go back in time and look at David Robinson's numbers from like 1990, was it 92? He came to the league or something like that, to like 94 when he won MVP. I think it was 94. Dude, this guy just wreaked havoc over the league. Like 4 stocks a game.
It's a monster.
20 points. Yeah, average like 14 rebounds. Like, that's what we're talking about here. This isn't like triple doubles are cool, but like this guy's going to be like literally be blocking 10 shots with a triple double at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think to me, it's just more about the ceiling. You can't go wrong with either pick, but I think there's the way that Wemby's going to be putting up these ridiculous numbers. And we already saw it. Like, I think he had one game where he was pretty close to a triple double. He had 9 assists or quadruple double, 9 assists with 8 blocks, 15 boards, 23 points.
It's insane. Yeah. Like he's winning you a week, like minimum, like just on that.
Yeah. So like, to me, it's like, yeah, it's got to be Wemby, man. You got to play the game. And like, this is part of it. This is the fun of it, right? Like you want to root for people to win. In betting, not so much. You win more money rooting for failure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's a game. You're going to want to look at the box score and just see these wild, outrageous numbers that we haven't seen in a very long time. So you got to go with the alien, man.
Dude, he's unbelievable. He's such a pleasure to watch. It's like, it's unbelievable to actually be able to watch like this whole thing like unfolding. And it's just like, he's gotten better. Like it's like he was like, it's like he started off and he was like a little bit like wonky. Like it's like he felt like, like kind of like a dude like Bambi, like out there a little bit, like flapping around. Like a flash or two, like here or there, obviously. But then it was like after the All-Star break, it was like, oh my God. Like the dude just was locked in.
He's getting handles like for all of this, like, those big guys that like, man, why can't he just get some touch? I think it was like Dwight Howard. It's like, bro, can't you just go holler at like Hakeem Olajuwon and get some tips? Wemby in year one is like, hey, yo, Jamal, can you show me how you do this like sham god thing with your handles? And now next thing you know, he's sham godding. Like that's not normal behavior.
No.
Like I think he could actually he's a very humble dude, but I think he has that tenacity of like Russell Westbrook. Like he's a dog. So like the fact that he's like a gym rat, wants to get better. He's getting coached by Popovich. Now he gets Chris Paul, a veteran, one of the best point guards ever to play with, dude. It's only going up from here.
I'm 100% with you. I think he's going to be dynamite this year. I'm so excited to see how this really works out. But all right, so Dan, before we get you out of here, obviously we always do a segment called Pods and Recs. And Pods and Recs is, as you might remember, it's a segment where we recommend anything to the listeners. So it could be a bet, it could be like a show, it could be like something that you're doing, something you're eating. I always seem to recommend something food related or like Costco adjacent, so
Costco got some bangers.
Yeah, so like some of that stuff. So I don't know, like I mentioned it to you off air, so I don't know if you had a chance to think about it, but if you need another second, I can hop in before you.
I got my recommendation because this is like fresh off my mind because it was something I was doing right before. My recommendation is, if you haven't already, I'm not even a Marvel DC guy, but Penguin, Colin Farrell is acting his ass off. This is like probably the most entertaining show that I've seen on Max since like probably Game of Thrones, which is probably, I don't know, there's been quite a few shows since then, but just the way that he's acting like the Penguin. The problem I always had with the Penguin, I don't know if you're a Batman dude or okay. So Batman Returns was ridiculous because they had Danny DeVito's small ass just fucking waddling around with actual penguins.
Like an actual penguin.
Always irked me. It always irked me, right? Like, why is this dude like eating fish and shit? Like,
it's crazy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just Danny DeVito being ridiculous. But at least they like changed the storyline, not to give spoilers, but they made this like an underground mob and the dude's got like a really mangled foot from like putting in work. And dude, Colin Farrell, I think he's a very underrated actor for the catalog that he has and the way that he's playing this role. It's a phenomenal script. I'm really excited for it. And I didn't even see the prequel. Like I didn't see the movie with what was his name? Dude from Twilight or whatever.
Oh,
and then
yeah. I think I watched that once, maybe, but I didn't even realize they were related.
Probably forgetful, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize they were related. Yeah. So
like it's all post that. And I didn't even watch that, but like just the first two episodes were bangers, man. So
I had it on the list.
I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I had it on the list of shows that I wanted to check out. So I'm glad that you recommended it because I was like waiting. I was like, should I watch it? Like, should I spend the time? Like, do I want to get invested in this? Because I used to like I watched Gotham like back in the day, like when that was out. The first couple seasons of that were good, and then it kind of went like the way that all those shows go. So it just was like, can't watch this anymore. But my recommendation is get a new frying pan. So look, I like the steel pans. Personally, like I'm a stainless steel guy, but my wife like doesn't like, she likes just like not stainless steel because she like makes the eggs and they just like stick. And I'm like,
it's the worst.
Pan's not hot enough. Like
it's the worst. It's the worst. So, nothing worse than scraping burnt eggs off of like a pot, man.
So I got this pan. This isn't an ad. I got this like, I think it's like an all day pan or something like that, or like Our Home, some one of those pans. It's some like way too expensive pan, but I got it at Target because they had a sale. It was like it was $150 for this fucking pan, but instead of $150, it was like $100. Because she's been talking about this thing for like literally a year. It's got like a strainer, like a steamer in it. It comes with a spatula, like whatever. It's pretty neat. It's a pretty nice pan. Let me tell you, I made some nice eggs. But the thing about like the new frying pan is like sometimes even if you're cooking on like Teflon, you're getting like a cheap pan. Like let's say you're gonna get like a $15-$20 pan. Like when you make eggs on that pan for the first time, it's just unbelievable when you get a new pan because it's just like they're sliding around.
It's never the same after that.
It's never the same after. But like that one cook, it's worth it for. So, like it's a new NBA season. Treat yourself because like you're going to have to be fueled up. You're going to have to make some eggs. Like you want to be sunny side up in the morning, and you can do that with the fresh frying pan. So that's my recommendation to you guys.
I gotta check it out because I'm at Target way more often than I actually like want to be. But like my kid loves it, so I gotta look at. Was it all day frying pan?
Yeah, something like that. I'll send you the link. I might put the link in the bio. I don't even get a thing for it, but it is what it is. So it's not too bad. But Dan, let everybody know where to find you before we let you go.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Dan Titus. Do some TikToks too. NBA season's obviously getting started October 22nd. So if you play fantasy basketball, go to Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Fantasy, get all my content there. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a great season altogether. Joe, thanks for having me as always, man. I love these preseason little catch ups. But yeah, man, let's have a great season this year.
Dude, they're always a blast. So it's always a pleasure to have you on. Make sure you follow him at Dan Titus. And get that frying pan so you can cook up those bets, and let's continue to cash that.